2:36 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN, Dan Mandis Show. 615-737-9986, 615-737-WWTN. Want to welcome back to the radio program one of my favorite guests, Congressman Mark Green. How are you, sir?
I'm great, sir. How are you?
I'm good, sir. Are you back in the great state of Tennessee, or are you in D.C.? Where are you?
Yeah, we're all at home. Have been now since that CARES Act vote. So yeah, I'm at home doing the social distancing thing too.
So let me ask you, and this is just curiosity on my part. What are you doing to pass the time? What does Congressman Mark Green do to pass the time during this time when we're all kind of stuck indoors? Are you binge watching anything?
Well, we're watching, my wife and I in the evenings. We're watching I just finished up Homeland. That looks like they've got a couple more episodes in the last season of Homeland, and that's been enjoyable for us. And I'm reading a book. I'm rereading the 100-Year Marathon, China's Secret Strategy to Replace America as the Global Superpower. I'm rereading that book. It's
light reading for you there, Congressman?
Yeah, I love to read, so I'm on that. And I went out yesterday and chopped some firewood. I just had to get out of the house, and my brain was just gelled, but in between conference calls and things like that, I went outside and chopped a bunch of firewood.
You know, the differences between Congressman Mark Green and myself, you were chopping firewood and I was jumping on a trampoline.
Okay, all right.
There you go. Well, let me ask you, so you have what I think is an absolutely great idea, and this is something that I've been advocating for a long time, even before the coronavirus. You are now calling on Congress to incentivize American companies to return to the United States. Now, you and I have spoken before, sir, about how China owns just a huge portion of our pharmaceutical industry, for example. And so I'm certain what your point is, that we keep making China stronger, and that's to the detriment of not only America, but the world. Talk a little bit about what you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are several bills out there that are addressing both the PPE issue and the supply chain for medications. My particular bill, the thing I'm trying to do is incentivize and help cover, the expense of moving a company back from China. And the way we're structuring it is you basically can expense 100% of the cost off your taxes, and to pay for it, we'll use the trade tariffs that we're collecting. We got $250 billion that we're collecting, about 25% off of that. These are, I hate tariffs, but while we have them and while they're there now, let's use the proceeds to get our industry back home.
Has it been baffling to you where, you got the Washington, D.C., and I'm sure that you knew all of this beforehand, but were you surprised at just how much China owns of, American industry, whether we're talking about manufacturing or pharmaceutical, whatever? Did that surprise you? I mean, talk about the scope of this.
No, I wasn't surprised, but it is pretty enormous. I mean, American businesses, they took manufacturing and moved it to China to save money. And what's happened to China is a couple of different things. One, the cost per unit of labor has significantly increased in China now. So a company could actually be in, say, Vietnam and have significantly decreased costs. So the one, there's that. The second thing is China is just not our friend. I mean, you can go and read, Dr. Pillsbury's book about China. You can read Henry Kissinger's book on China. I mean, they're not our friend. They are. You can read their books, their textbooks, what they teach their students. They teach that America is this bully hegemon that's doing everything to, basically colonialize and be this imperial power. They distort the truth of history. Going back to when we went and helped China out in World War II to defeat Japan. And so the business strategy, the business decisions that they're making are very, there's deception there. And we're learning all of that. We're learning the deception of how they handled this Wuhan virus and all of this stuff. And it's just been that piece of it's been enlightening. The fact that the manufacturing moved to China, I knew about that before I got up there. Some of the deception and some of the anti-Americanism is really what's enlightening to me in the past 6 months to a year.
I know that there's been a lot of folks that have been angry with China for many reasons. I mean, you talked about how they distort history. I mean, they distort current. I mean, they distort right now. I mean, they came out and they blamed America for the coronavirus, basically bringing it to China. I'm sure you know all about that. And
they blamed American soldiers.
That's exactly right, American soldiers. And so this is one of those things where if somebody wasn't understanding of how threatening and evil, in my opinion, China is, well, maybe this is now giving a glimpse for some folks who may not have been geopolitically smart up until now. China, you're right, it is not our friend. So a couple of very quick questions. One of the things that I would ask is, China has a lot of manpower, and they also don't have any real human rights going on there. So do we have the manpower to be able to handle everything that China is able to offer some of these some of these companies here in America? Can we match what China has to offer?
Obviously, labor in the United States is more expensive, but with the help of automation, I think we can keep those costs down incrementally and make it worthwhile between automation and between shipping savings on tariffs now with President Trump, and make it worthwhile for businesses to come home. We do have a labor shortage, or did in the old, in the Trump economy, we had a labor shortage. So clearly that's something that we would have to address. But we certainly don't want national security, and I am of the opinion now, PPE, our medical supply chain, all of that stuff is a national security issue. So we've got to do everything we can to bring it home, whatever it takes.
No, you're absolutely right. When you talk about it's a national security issue, I mean, China, they come up with all of this PPE, they send it out to the world like they're the heroes, and then it turns out that it's not functioning properly, or it wasn't built the right way, and wasn't manufactured the right way. And you don't have to comment on this, but I'm wondering if this whole thing was an accident. But let's move on from there. So one of the things that the president said was that he is going to look at defunding, the World Health Organization. We give them, roughly $500 million every single year. We know that the World Health Organization is, as the president says, China-centric. You are, of course, a doctor as well. And so what do you have? Do you have an opinion on that whole thing?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm very frustrated at how Tedros, the current leader, was, one, selected, and two, how he's run the organization since being selected. First, his selection process, he's the first non-medical doctor to run the World Health Organization, which, isn't necessarily a bad thing in and of itself, but it was unprecedented, and there were many other candidates vying for the job, and China leveraged its relationships with African countries to get him voted in. And while he was in charge of the foreign ministry in Ethiopia, there were some significant millions of dollars transferred into Ethiopia from China. He has worked with them. That relationship's been there. They put him in place in the World Health Organization. As soon as he got there, he asked for Robert Mugabe, the totalitarian dictator of Zimbabwe, to be the goodwill ambassador for the World Health Organization. I mean, and when he was head of the Ministry of Health in Ethiopia, we know he covered up 3 cholera outbreaks. So now he's in charge in the WHO. They, of course, absolutely, turn a blind eye to Taiwan's proof that there was human-to-human transmission. They basically take China's talking points and push it into mid and late January.
Yep. And
people are still flying from Wuhan, China, to the United States, infecting Americans. I mean, this is Xi's virus, and WHO is right there with him. So, I mean, yeah.
What's interesting, Congressman, is with Tedros, and folks, I've told people all about the whole situation with Ethiopia, and it seems to me like China was grooming this guy. You know, they saw him probably as some sort of a rising star or something, I don't know, but in Ethiopia, and so he's in charge. They're putting forth all of these millions of dollars, and then an opening comes up, and China lobbies hard for this guy because they know that he is, you know, sort of Chinese friendly, if you will. So they did want him in place. And to me, it's like they were grooming this guy so that he could become the head of the World Health Organization. And then he would become a mouthpiece for China and cover up the things that China does.
Yeah, it's hard to, you know, I mean, I can't. I think if you were to say it smells of that or it looks like that, I mean, I don't know that there's evidence to suggest that they made a strategic decision in 17 or, you know, in 15 or so when he was in that latter role. But we do know that China is very strategic, and you know they think in sort of a Sun Tzu kind of way, not in this grandfatherly Buddhist type way, but in the art of war, the warring states. You know, that period of China is where the current communist leadership in China gets its strategic thinking. And you can go and read their books, and I have stacks of them here in my office. They profess the use of deception and how the smaller, you know, entity takes on the larger hegemon, and the use of someone else's leverage and deception and all of this. So very clearly the Chinese Communist Party does those kinds of things. Did they do this with Tedros? Who knows? But we know they do those kinds of things.
I guess one of the things that I would ask, and maybe you know you can give me some insight, I don't understand if America gives $500 million to the World Health Organization, and China only gives, you know, a fraction of that. It's a lot of money, but roughly 50, 60, 70 million. Why does China have so much pull when America gives so much more money?
Well, honestly, the World Health Organization shouldn't be beholden to any country based on their donations.
Well, I agree. I agree.
So the fact that they supported getting the guy in the position probably is why he, you know, is leaning that way. I don't know. I don't know what else is going on behind the scenes, but they're clearly doing that, and so we clearly are going to stop paying them money. And the president made the decision. I mean, the American dollars have stopped flowing.
I love that, and maybe we can use that $500 million to help American companies bring their manufacturing and other jobs back to the United States. Have you
Sure.
received any feedback from your fellow lawmakers, maybe perhaps on the other side of the aisle? How do they feel about this idea?
It's hard to interact with those guys right now because we're located apart, and I have not reached out to them yet with this. We're putting all these together. We're writing legislation now. So it will eventually get to them. We'll put it in front of a few of them and get their opinion, but right now we haven't gotten to that point with it.
All right, Congressman Mark Green, thank you very much for joining us right here on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I wish you continued success. It's 2:50 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Thanks,